Hey, Jeremy.
Chris, does my image look very odd?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Good, because when I see my own picture, it looks very pixelated.
Oh no, not at all.
Okay, good. Well,
Remember,
in that case, I'm going to deal with it and resolve it after this meeting.
all right. And I am actually on my smartphone today myself.
Okay. How is everything going?
Good. I'm actually on vacation.
Excellent. Are you in Missoula or are you somewhere else?
Coeur d'Alene Lake down at the south end.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I love Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, this is a place I had not been. Hebron State Park. Yeah, right at the very southern tip of the lake.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it really is. Nice spot.
Too bad you can't turn your camera around and show us what you're looking at if it's beautiful.
Yeah, I actually had to drive into town to get Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So I'm in the town of St. Mary's.
Okay.
A little sort of half logging, half tourist town.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, it's a funky little place.
Well, I'm glad you're able to get away for a little vacation. Chris, are you still there? It sounds like you might be frozen. Hello, Amber. Hello, Jonathan, Trevor, and everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Megan, can you please check and see who's with us and who's not?
Absolutely. We're ready to take roll.
Yeah.
Sorry, you cut out, so I wasn't sure if you started the meeting or not. Okay, taking roll.
Right.
Chris Rowe.
Here.
Jeremy,
Here.
Trevor, Michael,
I'm sure Trevor was here. He was here
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, I
Just
think
after-
Trevor's
I
on mute.
hold the space bar down long enough.
Michael, Brian, Scott,
And I saw Scott's name pop up. I think he's here somewhere.
Yep. Scott is here. It looks like he's on mute.
got
Scott, are
it.
you there? Scott, we cannot hear you.
Jonathan,
Here.
great. David, Virgil, Ellis,
Here.
Aviv, Amber. Great,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thanks, Megan. Next up is Megan's handiwork. It's the approval of the minutes from our July 8th, 2021 meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments about those minutes? If not, we'll just mark those as approved and we can move on.
Megan, it looks like Brian and Scott are both here as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so next up, announcements and updates, item 3. Welcome our new team member, Jonathan Carlin. Hi, Jonathan, I'm Chris. I'll start and we'll do a little round robin, leave it. You can comment at the end, but you do a little introduction here. So again, I'm Chris Rowe. I've been the chair now for about 2.5 years, been on over 3. I've worked in basically as an environmental consultant for most of my career and mining and energy and watershed management. But the last 4 or 5 years, I've been primarily working in greenhouse gas reduction and renewable energy efforts. So that's one of the things that led me to be working on this team. So I'm still kind of new to Missoula. I've been here 4 years this month. So still pretty much a youngster, but we really enjoy it in Missoula, and I think we're going to stick around. So maybe I'll pass it off to Jeremy.
You bet. Thanks, Chris. My name is Jeremy Flesh. Welcome, Jonathan. It's great to have you on the team and look forward to, diving into your expertise and having you as a team member. I serve as the vice chair on the team, and my day job, so to speak, I work at the intersection of data analysis, communications, and education. So I work for Houghton Mifflin Harcourt and do a lot of data analysis of student assessment data, and work on that on a regular basis. I've been on the team for, I don't know how many years, but less than Chris, and started serving as vice chair, a year and a half ago, maybe? I'm
trying to remember when we had those elections. It seems like it was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and spruce up my memory of exactly when that happened, but a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we got a little bit of time off in the summer. I very much feel rejuvenated and ready to tackle not all of the world's problems, but hopefully some of Missoula's problems, at least as it relates to carbon. So it's good to have you on the team, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jeremy. How about Amber?
Hi, Jonathan. You and I met during the interview process. I think we might have actually been at a fundraiser last night at the same. I thought that when I saw your face, I'm like, I kept looking at you going, I know him, but I can't place him. So anyway, nice to see you again. And excuse me, I think I'm the Parks and Conservation Chair, and this committee falls under that. And I've been on City Council for coming up, this is almost the end of the second year, which most of it has been virtual. So looking forward to getting back in person someday.
All right, let's see, who else do we have? Next up, Mr. Bell.
Yeah, hi, Jonathan. Welcome. I'm fairly new as well. I started, my term would have started, I think January was my first month. So welcome, fellow newbie. And, my background is in finance and small business. I grew up in rural Colorado where the oil and gas industry was ever prevalent. And that's probably where I started my quote unquote activism, is having smelly gas rigs next to me and big 30-foot flames burning off excess fuel. So that's kind of what started my passion. And then now seeing a lot of the current climate change events in our world and having children has just inspired me to try to contribute even more so. And so happy to help out in any way to make it easier on you. Feel free to reach out or anything like that. But welcome aboard.
Thanks, Trevor. Brian Kearns.
Yeah, hello, Jonathan. I'm Brian Kearns, a utility engineer at I think we may have crossed paths before. You look really familiar. Anyway, I've been on the team lost track over a decade or so, and enjoy working on sustainability efforts here at and in the city. Welcome aboard.
Chris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know if Brian was still talking. I didn't know if you'd cut out. I'm just sort of doing this round robin. All right, Dr. McNall. Still on mute there, Scott. I think that's, oh, yeah, I think you had it there for a second. Yeah, now you're good.
Okay. So I'm a retired university professor with a long-standing interest in the environment, with a focus on sustainability, which is the rubric under which I continue to do research and write. Welcome to the committee. And again, if I can help in any way, let me know.
Thanks, Scott. Let's see here. Alice?
Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Ellis. I'm a sophomore at Hellgate High School, and I'm one of 3 youth team members on this committee. So I've been here since this spring, and it's just been a really cool opportunity to learn and be involved. So yeah, great to meet you.
Thanks, Ellis. Did somebody say that Michael Dorhorst was on? I can't quite tell there.
I have not seen Michael.
Okay. All right. Lee?
Yeah, hi. So my name is Lee Ratterman. I'm the climate action specialist for the city of Missoula. I'm not formally a part of this board, although work very closely with you all on our city initiatives and projects and programs. And so I have just been in this role a little over 3 months. I'm pretty new. I was working over at Home Resource. And then before that, I was over a decade working in Boulder, Colorado, working on their climate initiatives there. So it's great to be in Missoula. It's great to be working with the energy and climate team, and welcome, Jonathan.
Yeah. Just a couple of quick remarks. So with the exception of Brian Kearns and Michael Dorhorst, this team is fairly new, the last 1 to 3 years, and so we're sort of going through I wouldn't call it a shakeup, but a reformation. We've added these youth team members, the 3 of them. We've obviously added a new city climate change person in Lee, and so it's been an interesting change up, but I think almost exclusively for the better, and feeling pretty good about the makeup and our, Amber at the city council and Lee at the city, and we've got a wide range of expertise, engineering to finance to science to sustainability and almost everything in between. So I think we've got a real good mix of folks that make up the team. So with that, Jonathan, maybe you want to do some introductions?
Sure, yeah. Thanks so much for all these introductions. It's great to meet everyone and hope to get to meet everybody in person soon. So I'm Jonathan Carlin. I graduated from the university. I got my undergraduate last spring in wildlife biology and then a climate change studies minor. So I've done kind of a variety of like science, wildlife field work in Montana and Arizona, and then some policy work for the Chief's Office of the Forest Service and then the Senate. And kind of in those roles, got to see some of the climate policy at the federal level and some of the conversations happening there. And so I've been really interested to see and see how I can contribute in Missoula to a lot of the work that Missoula is doing on climate and energy. So yeah, I'm super excited to work with everybody over the next couple of years here.
Sounds great. Yeah, we're really interested in hearing all the stuff you've been working on. It's going to provide great value to our team. I think in the months and years that go forward. So welcome. So again, just announcements and updates. Megan, who is our city clerk. Megan, what is your formal title? I know you're a city clerk, but your role with us, like a coordinator or?
We call ourselves staff. I'm the deputy city clerk, and so I'm kind of the behind the scenes coordinator of getting our electronic agenda going and published and available for the public, and then running these meetings online behind the scenes.
Yeah, and so none of this would happen without Megan, so we're very thankful. She's also new, and so but coming on strong and really just keeping us on the straight and narrow. So that's fantastic. But tobacco, I mentioned, Megan forwarded to me an article from Mountain Line, the bus line, about their program for zero emissions. And I hope everyone had a chance to check that link, their sustainability page of Mountain Line. One of the things that just happened there is they just added, and I want to say 4 or 5 new electric buses. They had 4 or 5, so they must be up to 8 or 10 electric buses. Their goal is to make all their buses electric, and they have some pretty lofty goals at carbon reduction. They're, we have not spent much time at all really working with them. We don't really know who they are because we're working specifically with the city of Missoula, and Mountain Line is this quasi-governmental city county broader thing than that, but it does seem like they're really doing a great job. So I suggest everyone take a look at that webpage, and maybe at some point we'll get a chance to reach out to them to hear more about how they plan on accomplishing their carbon reduction goals, along with other sustainability stuff, not just carbon. All right. Anybody have any comments on that? All righty. Next up, I got a Missoula County energy efficiency building policy from Diana Mineta. Diana Mineta, for folks that don't know, is the not quite the equivalent of Lee's position, but very similar in the county. Their focus is a lot more also on the response to climate change, not just the carbon reduction effort. So there's a big part of that with her title, but also obviously carbon reduction, energy conservation. So they came up with a policy that means whenever they do a significant remodel or build a new building, they've got a policy for energy efficiency. So in the next 3 years, if they do a major renovation, they have to have a baseline reduction of energy use, EUI, which stands for energy use intensity, which comes down to thousands of British thermal units per square foot per year. And that is not a measurement I have ever worked with before. For short, KBTU per foot squared per year. I mean, I guess that makes sense. Just takes you a minute. But anyways, an EUI reduction for major renovations of 25% in the next 3 years, and then it goes to 30 at 5 years from that, 45 years from that, and higher goals for new construction. So I thought I'd share that with everybody, but that reminded me, I'd sort of forgotten, that the city of Missoula in 2007, under resolution number 7241, adopted an energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction policy for municipal building projects, including new buildings, building additions, and major remodels. And so theirs was a little more involved about what constitutes a major remodel. If the building is more than 2,500 square feet, if they're replacing 75% or more of the building cooling system, replacing over 50% of the exterior walls, and so forth. So, and then all new builds. And in terms of the goal, let's see here. So involve, trying to remember what the overall goal was in the terms of reduction, or they just have to do it. They also has an education component, which is also interesting. That's something we can be involved with. So both the city and the county now have these policies. I don't think this particular resolution for the city has been acted upon much in recent time because we haven't really done much. But we've had a lot of conversation over the last year or so about the potential for revamping the federal building, both city and county. And so with these policies, we guarantee that if that moves forward, we'll have some major energy efficiency gains and some probable renewable energy added. And there's also some other things that are going on. The public utilities under Jeremy Keene, they're looking at potentially building a new facility out on Scott Street. And so that's another one that could move forward with a major renewable energy efficiency component. I don't know of any other major renovations or new build projects between the city and the county. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Chris, did you mention the Parks Department is planning on building a new community center, or is starting to look at building a new community center out by Currents in Silver Park?
That's right. I'd forgotten that. I'd read an article on that. Lee, how far along are they on that?
I don't know, Amber. I don't know if you know, but
Yeah,
planning, I think.
Yeah, we're very, very early planning and still getting kind of public input. So I think that's a good flag, Lee, though, for the future, but it's pretty preliminary right now. So not very far is my response, but great thing to flag, really important to flag.
And I will say on that one in particular, the work that we're doing with McKinstry and looking at energy performance of Currents, we're kind of taking into account like what are some potential measures that could then feed into a new building, like ground source heating and cooling that could potentially, work for both buildings if that were to go forward.
Yeah, there was one thing I heard from McKinstry, and since the main part of town there is in this shallow alluvial aquifer with lots of very cool water. Apparently that source of plentiful shallow cool water can be used both to heat and cool the building depending on how the ground source heat pump is set up. And so one of the greatest energy conservation advancements in any new building, it sounds like it's going to be not your basic ground source heat pump, but a more advanced one. And it's almost like having, you know, a free energy source beneath our feet, like a geothermal. Something I'd really want to learn more about as to how to maximize the use of this, you know, consistently, you know, 45, 50 degree water we have year round and in large quantities. So that's something I think we'll be talking more about as we go forward. Any other comments about these new policies in this 2007 resolution? All right, well, keep it in mind.
Chris, when you have time, can you send out that resolution? Is that via email?
Yeah. Well, I know I sent out the one from the county, and it wasn't until a few days later I was like, oh yeah, on Friday when we had our meeting, I was like, oh yeah, I think the city has one.
Yeah, thank you.
Part of, you know, getting reconstituted in this sense is, you know, trying to figure out all the things that have come before us that we can use or have available and try to use moving forward. Just another little note, added on late in the process for the city's FY 2022 budget was an addition of $100,000 for energy conservation and climate action capacity building and for other executive policy initiatives. So it's pretty wide open. And so I know Lee will be involved in her boss and other departments trying to figure out what to do with this $100,000. But and we're looking forward to, you know, how that gets spent and what possible useful things come from it. Lee, do you have any? I know we talked about this the other day, but you guys don't really have a strong sense now as to exactly how you're going to go about this, but you do have some objectives that you're going to try to follow.
Yeah, so definitely don't have an idea yet of what that looks like. As of now, it's kind of coined as a one-time $100,000 capacity building funding, and so we're kind of looking at what does that mean? What is the potential for future funding? What exactly does capacity building mean in this sense? And what are our current needs? And, you know, what are we currently achieving and where are the holes and gaps? And can that be fulfilled through consultant work, or is that meaning new staff members, or, you know, what does that look like? And so I'm sort of putting together kind of a suite of options and planning to meet with some city council members. I think Amber, you'll be there as well at the end of this month, and hoping to get some clarity around what city council members are thinking, what the mayor's thinking, and then how does that align with some of the recommendations we've come up with. So yeah, still very open-ended, but very exciting. And it's so great to see city council supporting our climate action initiatives and, you know, putting some money behind the words.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you know, I see one of our major mandates in this group is to work with the city on moving these climate initiatives forward. And so here's a classic example of where the city has come up with some money and they're moving forward. And our job is to ensure that they get the most value out of that and the best benefit. I've never seen our job is to get in the way of the city and what they're doing. Maybe remind them on occasion what their goals are, but we really are an organization, and this is sort of toward Jonathan and a reminder to everybody else is to really work, you know, hand in glove with the city agencies, with the city council, the Parks and Conservation Committee in accomplishing these goals that we all have. So that's really been, since I've been the chair anyways, that's been my focus. I know in the past we've done a broader, almost community level set of efforts working with Climate Smart Missoula and others, but with Climate Smart Missoula being successful with the community efforts, we felt like, well, let's pull back and focus primarily on city efforts. and actually that same approach, same philosophy is occurred also in Lee's position, and then the other person who works with Lee, Charlotte Fisk, and so I think it's getting us a better focus, a little better strategic approach to how to get things done instead of trying to put too much on our plate. So I'm pretty excited about this more focused approach. As I think everyone's heard, the way Amber sees it, and some of the folks at the city council is we're sort of a brain trust to the city to help them work through achieving some of these goals. And so I think that's a great way to look at it, as well as a mouthpiece to get this information out to the broader community. So as I go on and on, people can tell me to stop. All right, next up is I do this from my car. I tell you what, I'm in St. Mary's, Idaho, near Coeur d'Alene Lake. I think since I started this meeting, there's been 30 log trucks that have gone by me. This place is, they're getting the timber out over here, I'll tell you.
Wow.
Okay, so item 4, public comment on items not listed on the agenda. So if there's somebody online listening and they wish to make comment, they can go to the agenda and find the phone number and the web page, and Megan's posting it there, and get in and raise their hands and make comment.
And Chris, I don't know if you can see, but I don't think there are any attendees.
Okay, no, I can't see that.
Yeah, currently there are no attendees, so. And if you are if someone is on the phone, you need to press *9 to raise your hand. But since no one's on there, I think we're good.
Amber runs her committee meetings and knows all this stuff now because she does it a lot more than I do. Okay, next up, action item, elections of chair and vice chair. According to the bylaws, the team shall elect a chair and vice chair from within the team's membership, who shall serve a term of up to 1 year. And I think, myself and Jeremy were elected. We were sort of tossed into the fire there. And then shortly after that, COVID happened, and we've been trying to, figure it out how to do things ever since. And so we missed the election. So Jeremy and I have both been in our elected positions for about 2 years. So we need to have an election. So, and if anybody, Megan or Amber, or anybody who better understands this process wants to chime in about how we take nominations and how we work the vote, I would not mind if you could help out with that process.
So I'm happy to weigh in on that. I think that the process would be that someone makes a motion for a chair and a vice chair. They could be 2 separate motions, I suppose. Maybe they should be. Let's do it in 2 separate motions now that I'm thinking about it. And then you vote on that unless someone or have a discussion around that. So I would say we hope that someone here, and I'd be happy to do it, but I don't think I'm the right person in the committee to do it. Then we take a vote, and then if that doesn't pass, we hope for another motion.
Thank you, Amber. Okay.
So I'd like to move. So I would like to move, if Chris is willing, that he continue in the role of chair.
I will second that motion.
All right. Any discussion on that? Yeah, any discussion on that motion? I'll go ahead and comment. I've been doing this a couple of years, and it does take some effort to keep meetings going and whatnot. So I wouldn't mind taking a break, certainly not leaving the committee, but if anybody else feels like they wish to step into the fray, I would be glad to nominate them. I'll certainly take the nomination if no one else is interested, but it's nice to rotate it around anyways, sharing the fun. I know Amber can appreciate what it takes to run these meetings.
Well, maybe we should hear from Jeremy
I
and
think
whether
Chris-
or not you want to switch roles.
Yeah, so I think Chris has done an excellent job. I would be very happy if Chris is willing to continue. I think to take advantage of what he has learned and his expertise, over the past few years is a good thing. My time constraint right now limits me from spending a lot more time, as I know that being chairperson of the committee would take a significant amount of time. So Chris, I think you've done a great job. I hope that you will continue. And, I'm very happy with what I'm doing as vice chair. And Chris, what I think you and Lee and Amber and I spoke about, I'm happy to take like specific projects. I kind of think of it as, as a big pie, and we all need to take a piece of that pie and kind of be the leader and take responsibility for moving that initiative forward. In some respects, kind of similar to how we worked with Montana legislature. I kind of took the lead on that one piece of the pie. And I'm happy to do that again. And we can kind of work to determine which piece of the pie that makes sense for. And honestly, I'm an advocate for other folks on the committee taking a specific piece of the pie or a specific chunk to do some additional research, to champion, and to bring updates back, and to continue that moving forward. I personally think that we are most effective if we all have something that we are focused on, and then certainly meet as a committee and talk about all of the items and make decisions as a group. But I think it's helpful if we each have, something that we focus on.
All righty. So we'll get to the vice chair nominations here in a minute, but we have a motion on the floor to move myself forward as the chair. Are there any other interests? You can nominate yourself, I think, or at least express interest in that position. So that's still on the floor. So any other nominations or self-interested folks? Any other discussion on the motion? Megan, can you call the roll for the election of Chris Rowe as a chair for the next 12 months?
You bet.
Megan,
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a note that just for the record that since we would go to public comment on the motion once it's on the floor, that there is still continues to be no public.
Thank you. Chris.
I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay. Jeremy.
Yes.
Trevor.
Yeah.
Brian.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Great. That is 5 yeses, 1 abstention, and that motion passes.
All right. Thanks for the faith. I don't know if I have it in myself as much as you do in me. So we'll move forward. Okay. So next up on the floor would be nominations for the vice chair. I
would like to nominate Jeremy.
Okay. Scott moved to nominate Jeremy. Any seconds on that? I'll second that one. Discussion on Jeremy's nomination, or if anybody else wishes to put another nomination forward. I think we already heard from Jeremy, so that's great. And of course, I've been very fortunate to have Jeremy around and look very much forward to continue working with him. I don't know if that everybody knows, one of the things that we set up is this little, you can call it a leadership team or whatever you want to call it, but between our monthly meetings, at least once, but sometimes twice, Jeremy, I, Amber, and often Lee meet to discuss what's going on to make sure we're keeping up. I think there's a lot going on right now, and sometimes once a month is just not enough to be able to understand and respond. And so Jeremy's been very active in that, as well as the committee as a whole. Any other comment? Any other nominations?
I'd like to, I don't know if you can see hands up or not, Chris, on your phone. I just want to thank both of you for your leadership on this in the past and your willingness to continue. I personally feel very happy about the continuity that we've got here and the momentum we have going. So
Thank you, Amber. All right, Harry, just to answer, I can't see hands up because I'm on my phone here. So if anybody else has their hand up, just go ahead and chime on in. Not hearing anything. Megan, can you call the roll on the nomination for Jeremy Flesh to be vice chair for the next 12 months?
You bet. And also seeing that there's still no public present in order to make public comment before we vote on the motion. And so close my window, 1 second. Chris Rowe.
Yay.
Jeremy.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Trevor.
Yay.
Brian.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
Okay, 5 yeses, 1 abstention. The motion passes.
All right, fantastic. So we got some leadership for the next year. And moving forward to non-action items, at the July meeting, Lee presented the greenhouse gas inventory for the city of Missoula, the municipal greenhouse gas inventory. There have been some updates to the main presentation. Lee presented it to the Parks and Conservation Committee, which I attended, and that was very, very well received by that committee. And Amber is welcome to comment on that. But it's really moving forward, and I as I've said before, I see this as really a main driver, a key piece of what we're going to do as an organization, because it identifies those areas that need the most work for carbon reduction. And so we're going to continue to sort of hound on this. And so if you haven't gone through and looked at where the low-hanging fruit is, where the greatest energy use is, where the greatest opportunity for conservation or renewable energy is, do that. I think I sent out the revised presentation. Along with that presentation is also a raw set of data, the real details, the inputs to the clear path model that Charlotte spent months and months putting together. Really huge effort. And I can send those out as well. I'll do that later. And so that we can find those opportunities, use that as our touchstone. So that's kind of my thought on that. And I don't know if anyone else has any other thought. I don't have a copy in front of me, unfortunately, but we can talk a little bit about where some of the low-hanging fruit is. I'm sure Lee can help us identify where she thinks some of the first or next approaches are going to be for energy conservation, renewable energy.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and add in that. So I just want to make it really clear that this inventory is just for municipal operations. So operations and buildings just associated with the city of Missoula. And we are working on a community-wide greenhouse gas inventory that we're hoping to release by the end of this month or beginning of October. And so that will give a really good baseline for both what the city is doing, but also how the community is doing as well. And one of the things to note is that when you look at the report, and I know I mentioned this in my presentation, but just want to reiterate that you'll see that the trajectory takes a hard spike since our last inventory. And the reason is because the city acquired the water utility. And so we moved those emissions data, that emissions data over to the city rather than including it solely in the community inventory. And so that's getting a lot of attention, as it should, because one of the things when the city did purchase the water utility, they recognized that there was going to be a lot of upgrades needed. There's a lot of areas of inefficiency and energy use that is for sure the low-hanging fruit when you look at that report. But one of the things I just really want to point out is those emissions have always been present in our community. They just now are owned by the municipality. And so those numbers came over. And so it's not like we have this 7,000 metric ton increase of emissions overall. It's just now that that's owned by the city. So I really just wanted to point that out, that it's a positive thing because the city now has control and we can make those changes needed to reduce those emissions. But yeah, I'm happy. Please reach out if you have any questions as you're looking through the report and want to understand what the city is doing to address the specific pieces. But we are kind of looking at it as a new baseline. So we do have inventories from past years, but since we didn't have the water utility, we never had included waste data before. We're really looking at this year as the baseline for going forward and measuring success. And we plan to do another one. This inventory included data from 2019 fiscal year. And so we're going to do one every 3 years. And so we'll do one for fiscal year 2022. And kind of look at the comparisons for both municipal and community.
And have we just started fiscal year 2022?
Yes.
Okay, so it runs from, does it start July 1st?
Starts July 1st, yep, to June 31st.
So July 1st, 2021 to June 31st, 2022 would be the fiscal year. Okay, thank you.
So Lee, I know you've had some discussions with folks over at both the Missoula wastewater treatment plant and Missoula Water, and they've at least put out some of their thoughts or ideas for how to reduce that. So even when you, regardless of whether it was in or out last time, what you find is, you know, one of the greatest energy uses within the entire municipal government is the water plant. In other words, it takes a ton of water to pump, it takes a ton of energy to pump water uphill. That's really what we're talking about. And so it is the biggest single user of energy now. And the wastewater treatment plant is right up there too. And so these are definitely areas we'll be focusing on, but they're luckily for us under Jeremy Keene and others, these folks are just moving right ahead and they've got some big plans. So Lee, can you fill us in on some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you mentioned, we're really lucky because leadership in Public Works is very committed to our climate action goals. And so I think, you know, along with everybody like us, they saw the data too, and we're like, oh my gosh, we are the biggest contributors, and so we need to do something about this. And so there is a lot of talk and action happening to take some action on reducing those emissions. And so the wastewater treatment plant is looking to put out an RFP to get some solar arrays out at the wastewater treatment plant. So they would do a ground mount solar. They're looking at doing a rooftop solar that would essentially account for a lot of the energy use at the wastewater treatment plant. So that's really exciting. The water utility has been kind of systematically doing some upgrades to its lifts and pumps as they break, but we're kind of realizing that that's not quick enough or action oriented enough. And so as part of our energy performance contract, which is kind of later in the agenda here, we've added looking at the lifts and pumps and looking at potentials and paybacks for making some upgrades ahead of schedule or ahead of, you know, waiting for things to break down. And then finally, as the city looks at building new wells, so as the city grows and we need more water, we're looking at building new wells. I know there's one planned for Mullen Road area, and so we're looking at the potential to either power those by solar or to kind of move those onto, rather than Northwestern Energy property, to move them onto Missoula Electric Co-op property, and kind of looking at the pros and cons of doing solar versus participating with a utility that has mostly, I think they're somewhere between 95 and 99% clean energy. And so kind of just weighing those options of kind of being self-sufficient versus supporting a utility that is really promoting clean energy. And so those are all, really interesting conversations and exciting things. And those are kind of the top ones off the top of my head, the big things that we're working on. But yeah, continuing to always look at equipment and efficiency and how we can kind of make changes. But as we all recognize, completely overhauling such an outdated system as we have currently in our water utility is a very expensive and timely process. And so as we want to and need to reduce those emissions, we also kind of have to recognize that it's going to be a process.
This might be a bit more for Amber, is along with that costly, it seems to be a hot topic right now in the community, is about the water treatment plants cost. And so I guess I'm fearful of, with that being such a discussion, is there going, what are councils or thoughts as far as making sure that we're not, lack of a better word, skipping corners as far as lowering costs, but not taking into consideration the carbon emissions and those things?
So I'm I don't know if I'm not quite sure what the question was exactly, but I appreciate the comment and the kind of bringing that to the forefront. I would say that the council's very aware of those things, but we don't have a plan specifically around them. I'm not, do you have a question? I'm not clear what the question was. I'm sorry.
More of that is the plan itself is so costly and that the city is losing money. And then if it's outdated and these improvements need to be made, I'm just concerned that there'll be, improvements made to save money versus not necessarily what's sustainable.
Right, looking at the long term. Well, I would hope, I appreciate those concerns, and that is, that is something that we're constantly weighing as a council, whether decisions we're making, like what the long-term effects of those are, and if we need to spend more money on the forefront to be fiscally conservative longer, or reduce our emissions, in the long run. So for sure, I think that that's something that is on our radar, and I'm one of those people, but I think that we would make the right decisions around that. I mean, I think we would I think that that's something that is always a balancing act and that we're weighing, but for sure, I think we're, and I would say, I think that this committee and Lee and all, that's kind of what we look toward to get advice too.
Yeah, I'm sorry the raise hands function doesn't work so great on the screen. Yeah, Lee, I really liked what I heard in terms of looking at alternative energy companies, as well as the solar panels for the pumps. And I have a selfish interest in this, being on a water board in our neighborhood. We have tried to figure out how to lower our energy costs for pumping water. It's a huge part of our expense for managing the water system, just like it is for the city of Missoula. So as you get down into the details of what an array might cost, there's a lot of people across the county, as well as within the city, who would like to know about your success in terms of bringing down the cost of the arrays. And so sometime when you come back to the committee with that information, love to hear more detail. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And absolutely, I'll for sure report out on everything that we learn. It's always a moving target, and we're hoping that some of the federal legislation that's up for discussion and the budget reconciliation might include some, federal funding for solar arrays and renewable energy and those sorts of things that would help offset a lot of the costs. And Trevor, I just wanted to mention, based on your question too, is that I kind of have had added to my work plan, and this is a big ask, and I really don't know how to define it or what it will look like yet, but to create a climate lens for the city of Missoula. And so this would be kind of a decision-making matrix or some way to make sure that when decisions are made, that climate is held as a consideration and something to weigh as they're making the decisions. They're doing it currently citywide with an equity lens. And so I'm kind of hoping to piggyback off that. And so when we're looking at any decision, whether it's what kind of pens are we purchasing, how are we developing, how are we updating code, all of those sorts of things, that will look like what are the equity considerations and then what are the climate considerations. And so it's a big task, I think. But
Lee, are you possibly asking for us to establish a work group to assist you in that effort?
oh, that would be hugely appreciated. Yeah. Are you volunteering,
All
Chris?
right. Yeah. What else? I got nothing else to do. No, I think it's a good idea. Equity became the big issue, and it's been an issue in our town for a long time. And so I value that the city wants to make that an effort, and it can be a little hard to figure out equity. We had this discussion not so long ago about adding new members to our team, and it can be a little squirrely. And so energy conservation is the same way. And so, yeah, do you spend more money for pens that are greener, and what the heck's a greener pen anyways? And so, yeah, to look at those sort of things would be, how do you actually score it? Is it an objective number at the end, or is it a subjective, kind of this works better than that? It would be just sort of rummaging in my head a little bit. Yeah, not always that simple, because you're always balancing, all the other things like equality, budget, the need to move city activities forward. So yeah, I think that's going to be a tough one to figure out, and how to apply it. Because do you apply it through the budget process, or do you just put it on every department lead to make sure they use this checklist for every purchase over $1,000 or $10,000? Or yeah, it's an interesting discussion. So are there any other folks that might be interested in helping out? Or go ahead, Amber.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that was my first thing, is saying we need to do I try to make my decisions that way, and have since I've been on council, like thinking about those two filters when you make decisions. But what I think that what I love, Lee, that you brought that up, and I also like that, Chris, you jumped right on it to help, because I see this. I think it could really go in different ways. I think that one of the things sitting on council that having, like I said, when I started sitting there trying to say, I'm going to look at all my decisions through these two lenses, but it's hard to remember to take that lens, because some of them are very complicated things. But also it's really helpful, I think, and would be, if when we had presentations, a lot of them land use planning, some, A&F type of decisions, if those departments were coming with answering almost a list of questions regarding how this affects climate, like if we've got it on the department's radar to, like, the council wants to know A, B, and C on every project, I don't think we're going to get down to pins at this point. I know that was just kind of, we can get that kind of specific, I know, but I think I'm just putting this out there for, hopefully people will volunteer to be involved in this, because I love the idea of Lee getting some help, because it's giant. But that would just be, such a big help for us in making decisions, because to be honest, like we were saying with the brain trust piece, we don't always know what questions to ask, right? I mean, council wasn't hired because they're all scientists, although some of us are. So anyway, I love that, and I think it'd be really helpful. And yeah. this good place for this committee to weigh in, I think.
Chris, and if my assistance is beneficial on that work group, please count me in. I echo the comments made by Lee and Amber, and I think there's great benefit to having such a final end. So
Yeah, I agree. I would like to participate as well. I think, especially my background, would be well suited for that area, weighing kind of the financial costs also as well.
I'd be happy to join too.
I'd be
Same
happy
here.
to attend and just kind of give the perspective of what I think that would be helpful to council, if that's helpful.
Yeah, so I didn't, Megan, did you get all the names of the folks that volunteered? We don't want to let any volunteer get by.
I did. They'll be in
missed
the
a couple of
minutes.
those. I think Trevor. Alrighty. Yeah, I think of this as like a risk assessment tool. I've set up a lot of these where you're evaluating costs or environmental impacts or health and safety impacts. You've got your mandate to do whatever, pump water, and then you run specific actions through that risk analysis, and you come back, and it's usually a red, yellow, green sort of thing. But in this case, it's evaluating all the other things against energy conservation or whatever. Where does this come out? And so using something like that sort of pattern that everyone can go through, and whether it's a spreadsheet where they check boxes or they put in, a 1 to 10 score or whatever like that, and it just comes out at the end with a number or a color or something like that, that then they can use that to say, oh, this becomes a priority now, or no, this one we're going to wait on. But that's one way to approach that. So any other I think that's great. We kind of digressed there, and that's fantastic. Back to the emissions inventory and looking at effort. One of the things, Lee, that you didn't mention that might help us in deciding how to move forward with additional solar arrays is the wastewater treatment plant has been talking about it for 7 or 8 years. I'm sure Brian can chime in on that, but I think they're actually getting to the point where they may start doing engineering and cost estimates for a solar array at the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, yep, they are moving forward with putting out an RFP. They're interested in looking at a kind of novel funding source that the county just worked on with their detention center, and they got a third-party financing model, and there was some question around the legality of it, but it's it turns out it's all above board, and Northwestern Energy approved their large solar array, and so our wastewater treatment plant folks are interested in looking at that same sort of model, and there's already been some interest in our community, and so I think they're going to put out a formal RFP or RFQ to explore that.
Lee, that's excellent. I'm curious, as the process moves forward, if there's any additional energy that is generated that is not used, if that would get passed back to Northwestern Energy, or if they're looking at a battery storage system. I'm curious on some of those details as they become determined.
Yeah, and I know that it would not be legal to put the energy back into this Northwestern system based on the size of it. I think that's where some of the legality issues come in. Battery storage is an interesting idea that would potentially be added down the line, but I think for now they're trying to size the system to the energy use of the facility, and that's been interesting because we're looking at potentially doing some upgrades of some of that equipment that would be significantly energy saving, and so they don't want to build the facility or build the solar array to oversize based on potential future energy efficiency projects. So there's been a lot of conversation there.
But then also looking at the fact that Missoula is growing, so the WWTP may need to be able to handle larger loads in the future. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so along those lines, a couple of thoughts. One thing we discussed the other day was we had a tour of the wastewater treatment plant um, just before COVID, but it was not a good day for most folks. And so the wastewater treatment plant does have some pretty innovative stuff with organic matter. CO2 comes out the other end. And they really have done a bang up job, and the folks over there are really smart about this. And so we may try to set up another field trip to the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
And what we did
Poplars there as well.
Exactly, add in the poplars. Last time we didn't make it over to the Poplar Farm, but one of the things the wastewater treatment plant has that's pretty innovative is at the end of the process, they've got a bunch of organic waste, and that's often taken to landfills. And as we know, one of the other big emitters of CO2 and methane, CH4, in the county is the landfill because of decay of organic material, primarily anaerobic, whatever, but methane comes out or CO2 comes out in large quantities. What these guys do is they put all of their organic waste in a large vessel, really large, and let the bugs activate on it. And so as these bugs are generating, it's anaerobic, so it's primarily methane. Aerobic decomposition is CO2, anaerobic is methane. I mean, just not that matters a whole lot, but they capture basically 100% of this methane within this container and use it to power a turbine, electric turbine generator. It's like a big diesel engine, but it's running on methane, and they generate electricity that they use to power the plant. And massively successful, and it's out there immensely. And so that's one of the biggest success stories within the city government of carbon reduction efforts. And so it's really worth checking out if we get a tour together. And then brings us to the next point, which is the Poplar Farm, or Poplar Plantation, or whatever you want to call it. And so the Public Utilities, Public Works has been discussing for years what to do with these things. So right now, they're used to remove, as I've said in these emails, used to remove phosphorus from the water prior to going into the Clark Fork River. And that's tremendous. But what we've done also now is stored a whole bunch of carbon in these trees. And so we've got the trees that don't have a market. We don't want that carbon to be re-released into the atmosphere. What are we going to do with the trees? And then once those trees have been harvested, we need to replace them with something else that continue to remove methane, and hopefully as a side benefit can continue to sequester carbon. Currently, the plan that they're looking at would be to alfalfa, very water intensive crop, as we all know, but we've got a lot of water. And then you would harvest that alfalfa and sell it off to farmers, to cattle operations and whatnot. The problem with that is once the cows, the hogs, whatever, eat that alfalfa, then you're re-emitting methane and CO2. And so it works well for the phosphorus process, but it does not work well for the carbon process. And so we had several ideas that came out of that discussion, that email discussion. So what I want to do is open it up and see, we can continue talking about, Michael Dorhorst was talking about working with the university, particularly their ag department and the horticulture, about what they think. Scott can talk about it, checking to see what Oregon State has done. They've done some similar work. I thought about possibly doing a constructed wetland and having those organic deposits settle in the bottom of the wetland and become sequestered that way. So there's definitely a bunch of stuff out there, but I want folks to be doing some research, just, Googling whatever, thinking, passing ideas on. I don't know if anything has come out since that email has been put out. Anybody have any other thoughts or ideas? Just sort of open it up that way.
I don't know how viable fruit is, but I know in my hometown, or where I went to college, the water plant uses it to grow wine grapes. So it's pretty much the same process, but just replacing it with wine grapes. And then, there's a big market right now for those. So
I have a couple of questions for Cheryl, if I may. Cheryl, it wasn't clear to me from reading the material what the long-term goal is. So right now it's filtering out phosphates, but the trees also obviously filter out other contaminants. And there are different ways to filter different things. And then the idea of planting alfalfa so that it would be a cash crop. So if the goal is trying to grow something from which the city is ultimately going to make a profit, while at the same time decontaminating the water that goes back into the Clark Fork, these things don't easily fit together. So just a general question about what's the goal and what are the parameters?
So you make a very good point there. I think that originally the goal was that we were going to contain the contaminants and then also sell the wood of the poplar trees, There is not a market for that, is what we have discovered. And so I'm not sure if that market has changed. I wasn't on council when that happened, so I'm not sure what all the research around that was. So, I mean, I think the way the council and the city looks at it, and Lee, you're welcome to weigh in from your side, but is that our first goal is for decontamination. I mean, we're trying to make the best environmental choice we can make with that land, right? If we can also make some money for the city, absolutely. If it can be a cap, but I think weighing them, our first thing would be that we want to do environmentally what is the best thing for that piece of land that we have and use it the most efficiently, with regard to that being our primary goal. And of course, if we can make money off of it too and support reinvestment, great. But I think that we are somewhat aware that may, at least I am, that may not, both of those things may not happen.
Yeah, and I think Lee wants to weigh in, but just a couple of things. Nobody knew that the market for basically pulp was going to go away. I mean, it's gone away all over the country, so it's just not Missoula. And when you're filtering out the contaminants, there are some kinds of crops, if they were for public consumption, possibly can be contaminated. I mean, that's just something to think about. But because I know one of the suggestions was, well, what about turning this into a gigantic farm, which might work depending on what it is you're filtering out and what the plants are absorbing. But it's an interesting problem. There have been a lot of different kinds of solutions around the country. I will be quiet and let other people ask questions.
No, I appreciate those comments, and I think that all of those are things that we're going to need to weigh moving forward. So,
I just wanted to chime in and say too that as we're considering this, it's great to look at the co-benefits of the different potential crops or whatever too, because right now with the trees, we're having carbon sequestration. It's an incredible wildlife habitat, but it's also a monocrop. And so it's not as good potentially as it could be. And then, what does that look like if it were alfalfa or whatnot? And what are those co-benefits? And then what are we losing? And there's a lot to consider, but I think it's, an interesting project.
Just two of the challenges, which when I was looking at this, I was seeing is it seems like with the artificial wetland, it's sort of a balancing act between sequestering carbon and not releasing too much nitrous oxide and methane. And it sounds like in like colder climates, that can be a little bit tricky. It sounds like it works really well in like salty, brackish water. And then it just takes more kind of keeping an eye on what's coming in and out up in this area and when you have fresh water. And then it seems like with the crops, like I was seeing a lot of research on how you sort of end up saturating your soil with carbon after a certain point. So you keep building that carbon, but then eventually over different time scales, but within a few decades, depending on where you're starting, or sometimes even sooner, you're sort of at full saturation. And if you till it, you're gonna end up releasing a lot of it. So now you have this like well-saturated soil to absorb a lot of carbon, but then I guess you're sort of flatlining your amount of carbon intaking. So I guess that was two things that I kept running into.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, you're right. So the wetlands do have that problem. They make swamp gas, and so that's better known as methane, and they can emit that carbon. Some wetlands do long-term sequestration of carbon. Others it decays as it goes, and so it has to be balanced there so that you're not just a temporary sequestration and then it decays. And and the crops are, like you say, there's some similar problems. One of the thoughts I had with the crops is if right now what they could do with the crops is they could make it into the Garden City compost. The problem with that is we've got a bunch of it, but we don't have a big enough market for it. They were getting rid of a lot of it, selling it to mine reclamation efforts in the region. I think a lot of it in Idaho. But as those projects are completed, there isn't the need for large quantities of compost. And so one of the things is to work with the existing system we have, which is taking whatever the carbon generated and the sequestration of phosphorus and making it into compost. And compost can be a long-term sequestration effort, but if you can't sell it, what are you going to do with it? So that's another sort of way to look at this, is just use the existing one. It brought up another thought when you said about long-term sequestration in the soils. One thing we've not talked about is biochar, and I know Al Gore started talking about biochar 5-6 years ago, and that's still his big thing. You basically take the carbon and you cook it at low temperatures, low oxygen environments, and you create this carbon source that is remarkable for adding value to crops and is a long-term sequestration in the soils. And so that's one we haven't talked about, is biochar. Although setting up a process to make that would probably be pretty darn involved. But we already have a process to make compost, so who knows?
Not to get too deep into the weeds about biochar. There have been 2 large California projects to create biochar, and one of the problems they've had is finding a market for it, because the cost of creating the biochar is sufficiently high that farmers don't necessarily want to use it. And unless there is a state regulation, as there was in California, to require farmers not to burn their trash from the orchards, you can't get there. So, I mean, biochar is a great idea, but the economics are sketchy. In any case, if we're going to volunteer for something, I'd really be interested in volunteering for a subcommittee that works on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it would be good, I think, to hear from the folks at Public Works as to some of their ideas. So maybe we will have somebody from that unit come to one of our next meetings.
Yeah. I spoke with somebody who works in watershed restoration. I just ran into this person.
I can't hear anyone. I'm going to leave and try to come back in.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Amber.
I had a conversation with a gentleman that works in watershed restoration, just at the local farm stand here, kind of just off of 3rd Street. And one of the things that he was talking about was, we were talking about this exact topic. He talked about willow trees, and that's certainly something that I could follow up with some other folks within watershed restoration about that. So just kind of a little tidbit of info.
Chris, I have to jump off and make it to we're having a staff retreat. So I just wanted to see if there's anything else quickly that I can help answer or leave it to you guys and say see you next time.
Chris, you're on mute. Chris, you're on mute.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks for taking time out during your organization's retreat. And I think next we'll probably contact you about who we should bring in to present at our meeting about what Public Works is thinking about with the poplar plantation.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Lee.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry to cut you off. Enjoy the rest of the meeting and nice to meet you, Jonathan.
Great to have you involved, Lee. Thank you.
Thanks.
So instead of setting, go ahead, Amber.
I was just going to say, I lost audio there for the tail end of that conversation. I can get caught up later with you, Chris, just so you know, I left and had to come back in.
Yeah, just, some of the good ideas that we've had, and they're all captured in the minutes. So we're generating some ideas, but really the next step is to bring somebody or some people from Public Works to our next meeting to talk about this.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, I was just to say a question I had was, has the city or anyone looked into like these voluntary carbon markets where, carbon is traded on an exchange basically. And so, you can kind of get paid for sequestering carbon. Do you know if that's something that's been looked into at all to like get into one of these types of programs?
I was just going to say, I do not know if Chase, who was in Lee's position before, if he had looked into that. I've not heard anything around it.
Not us selling them, but but one of the things that so we have a goal of carbon neutrality here coming up pretty quick. And the only way we're going to make that is by buying RECs, renewable energy credits. So that was the way the city was going to go, but we've never looked at selling our own credit. We've only looked at buying credit. And so the Garden City compost is essentially could be considered under a REC kind of market. And so, no, I don't think we've ever considered that, but that'll be a good question to ask somebody from Public Works when they come in.
Actually, Chris, that we have sold them. The greenhouse gas team at one point years ago partnered with a wholesaler called Stern Planet, and you could purchase RECs from the city, from our website, and the greenhouse gas committee would earn a commission on those. They weren't RECs that we generated. We were just basically a retailer, buying them wholesale and selling them retail.
That's right. That came up recently as to what that project was and where it was at. And you're right. So it was a short-lived project where the city sold those. The energy and climate team was involved in that process. But not sufficient interest. One thought on doing it this time is it wouldn't be a local market. You would sell it on a broader carbon market, I would think. So anybody, you would use, like we did before, an intermediary to market it and to account for it, but maybe open it up to a broader market than just within the city. So maybe trying it again, but with a different twist. So, yeah, so all good ideas. But yeah, a lot of challenges. Up next is, and we'll come back to this at the next meeting. So, but up next is the energy performance contract. Lee's gone, so I'll try to remember some of the things that are going on. As you know, and maybe Jonathan doesn't, but the city of Missoula hired McKinstry as a consulting company to propose energy conservations, renewable energy projects, and then the city could purchase into those under a contract with McKinstry. Energy savings would be made. We would pay McKinstry for a set amount of time. They make back their investment plus a profit. And at the end of that time, whatever that, new lights or new HVAC system we own. So it's a pretty straightforward model. And so McKinstry's got just a ton of ideas. They kind of just went off the deep end. But I think the city itself is still kind of on the cautious side, as city governments often are, and are looking at just a couple of smaller projects to roll out and to do some things like new lighting in the parking garages. And there was a couple of other ones. And actually the parking department, whatever they're called, is actually not part of the city, oddly enough. I didn't know that. And they may actually be pursuing that with McKinstry. In addition, as many of you know, the county and the University of Montana are also contracted with McKinstry to do energy performance contracts. So that process is moving forward, but they're keeping their expectation low. But if it works and the city becomes comfortable with it, the number of projects and the size of the projects going forward could be significant, but we're probably still a ways out before that happens. Hey, Brian, do you have any other comments on how's it going at the University of Montana with McKinstry? Are things still moving forward well?
Yeah, at the university, we're using them under the performance contracting for basically two projects. One is we're doing a combined heat and power plant, and that is moving along. We'll start construction in the next couple of months. And then the second aspect is energy conservation. And they've did the same approach with our campus as they're doing with the city. They look at everything, put together a huge list of potential projects. And we thought we'd have a pile of money to start chipping away at that. It turns out that we're only going to do a few lighting projects on campus, upgrade from T8s to LED fixtures. So those are the projects we'll be doing.
Brian, you cut out a little bit, or I couldn't hear the first one very well. Can you repeat item number 1 that you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Again, we're using McKinstry under energy performance contracting for two projects. One is combined heat and power. So that is, we're going to be generating our own electricity on campus. And, saving a bunch of, improving our carbon footprint by about a third and saving about half the cost of our energy.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
So, we'll hear more about that, but mostly, we continue to, the city continues to work with McKinstry. I've been in touch with them, and they're excited to do everything all at once, but it's good that we've got a company that's got a lot of good ideas and a lot of good engineering and accounting behind their efforts. So with that, we'll move on to 6.4. And I know we've only got one youth team member here tonight, is Ellis. I heard from Aviv. He's actually traveling. He's over in Israel right now, so he couldn't attend. But one of the thoughts we've had is to work with the youth team members to create a project that they would work on through the school year. We would work with the schools to get credit for them on this project, and then there would be a deliverable at some point and a presentation to this team and maybe to the city council. So the thought was, and we don't have to answer this today, but get the brain juice going as to, first of all, do we want to do that? Ellis, do you want to do that? And if so, what does the project look like? Amber came up with one the other day, which I thought was great. So we're talking about doing this energy conservation demonstration project at the federal building. And so there's both technical components as to what the energy conservation measures is, but there's educational components as to how you would educate the public, using the internet, using signage, how would you, the process by which this becomes a demonstration project, that end of it, versus the tech, or both ends, and doing some development work on the demonstration end of this project. Was that what you were thinking, Amber? Maybe we lost Amber.
I'm having some major audio issues here, so I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Now you're frozen. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Amber, I can hear you. Chris, you are muted now. Chris, you are muted and also your video is turned off. So, Amber, is City Council going back to meetings in person? At least that's my understanding, correct?
Okay, I can hear a little better now that my video is off for some reason. I don't know what's going on. I did not hear what Chris said though, but I heard my name. So we are not going back in person at this point. Was that your question?
Yes, because I know,
what
if we had had this conversation a few months ago, my understanding was there was a plan for City Council to return to in-person meetings with the option for folks to call in and participate remotely as well. And then,
yeah, we were going with a hybrid meeting, and we just finally had all the kinks in that worked out, and then we decided with the numbers that we were not going to go back in any form of hybrid.
right, with the COVID spike.
Yep. So that's not on the radar. Was Chris talking about the education piece? Is that what he was wondering about? And he was, okay. I see Trevor nodding.
And Chris is back with us now as well. Chris,
okay. And I'm going to leave my video off because I think I can hear a little better when my video is off. Yeah. So Chris, were you talking about the federal building? You're
Chris,
muted.
Chris, you're on mute. Chris, you're on mute.
No, he's I'm sorry. I think what he was, I'm sorry, I don't know what is going on with my audio today, but I think he was talking about the federal building and maybe the possibility, the idea of that being a project for youth board members. And I mean, that's just something that kind of came up as something that might be a great place for them to engage if we did a demonstration project. And it's just one idea. I don't, I haven't perfected what that idea would be and what that would look like, but that could be something. And I'd like to also though hear, that was an idea I had obviously, and I'm not a youth team member. So I would like to hear from them as to what they think. And if that might be something they're interested in, or if there's another direction that might be of more interest. I mean, so is Ellis still on? Let me look.
Yep, Ellis is here.
Ellis, you're here. You're representing everyone today, Ellis. You're our one representative. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts around that or any ideas or?
No, I think a youth team member project, a demonstration project, I mean, all of that sounds very cool. Not sure what it would entail. But yeah, having a concrete project to work towards as a breakout team, I think could be a super cool opportunity in a way that we could try to contribute. So I'd definitely be down.
Great. And the other thing is, I don't, Ellis, just maybe think about this and talk to your, talk to your friends at school about it or teachers or whatever. But I know that there's the, like at Hellgate at least, and I know not everyone's at Hellgate, but there's the advanced problems in science class. And I don't know if there's some more science-based, rather than just the demonstration piece. I mean, I know there are all sorts of classes that have extra credit type of things, or I just think about that. I don't know where this would fit in, but I don't know if the idea I had would fit into any of those type of things, but it's there could be something in there that could go along with schoolwork as well, possibly, is what I'm saying. So think that through as you're mulling it over.
Amber, what's the timeline for do you know, for the plantation, the poplar plantation?
I think we're reviewing it now. I don't think we have a set timeline yet that I've heard, at least yet. Sometimes things come to us come to council in a later.
I mean, that could be an idea if the timeline before a decision is going to be made is at least a while down the road. Sometimes younger folks having innovative ideas might be pretty interesting to see what they could come up with.
Yeah, I love that. I actually love that. Let me do, I love that. Let me do a little research and ask around about what our timeline really is, because I've not heard that yet. That's a great idea, though.
So this is Chris again. A question for Ellis. So in school, is this project of value for you going forward, like in making application to colleges, or having something like this in your transcripts, or you put it on, for your resume or whatever you guys use these days to move forward in your careers? Do you guys see some value coming back to you when you're done with this?
I think it definitely depends on what it is, or how the project unfolds, or what the vision ends up being. I think it could, be beneficial for applications, or I mean, just a cool experience, I think, that we could talk about, but I wouldn't really care about the credit or the resume builder. So I think just having a cool experience, so it sounds really cool.
I'll just also, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, Jonathan, go ahead.
So I forgot to say, I'm still a student at the university too. I'm a grad student there, and I've worked pretty closely with folks in the climate change studies program and the honors college, and a lot of them are working on there's like the Quest program, and then there's various capstone projects and stuff. So if it's helpful, I'm happy to put some feelers out and find out if there's any potential collaboration with the university. I meet with a lot of those professors all the time, so I'm happy to do that if that's helpful.
Yeah, we'll keep that one on the table. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is it's a good idea. We've got ways to move it forward through the university, or through some of the programs like at Hellgate with the advanced science program. And so we just need to start putting it together. I don't want to take too long on this, because the school year is already getting started. And the other person who's very knowledgeable in a lot of this stuff is Michael Dorhorst. He's not here today, but I know he's got a lot of contacts at the school district, and how things can get done extracurricularly with something like this. So I'm gonna also reach out to him and maybe just do a little write-up and send it out to everybody and see what they think.
I think that's great.
And I'll also ask the other youth. Amber?
Great. I was just going to say, I like that. Maybe I don't, just throwing out ideas that maybe there could be a team member here that would kind of be the mentor for the youth team. If there's anyone that wants, I think that could be a little more streamlined than trying to cover it in these meetings. And Ellis, while I appreciate you, because I know you, and I know that you really honestly do want to just have the experience, have the cool experience. I also think that it would be great if we could give these kids in our community that are volunteering their time and their energy to be part of this, something that is beneficial to them, if it can also be a resume builder, I want to do that for them. So I apologize. And I love your idea, Jonathan. So thank you for bringing that up. And I think for sure we should put our feelers out to the university on that too. And I apologize because I'm late for another meeting now, so I need to get off.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Amber.
Amber.
Thank you, everyone.
And so that about wraps up the agenda, except the last item, which is if any team members has any comments about whatever, now's the time to exercise your right to chat on screen.
I just think what David's doing is pretty awesome. I know in the email, I didn't really realize that he was riding across America. So I just thought he was going to Scotland. And then I saw a article about it. And I think it's pretty neat. So.
Yeah, if you can send me that article, Trevor, and I think you did actually, I'll send it on to everybody. But yeah, David is a man of action. So David Morris is one of our team members. But we haven't seen him for a number of months because, yeah, he's either riding his bike to Glasgow or out teaching classes in the Utah desert or just all manner of things. An amazing person to have on our team. All right, so our next meeting will be in 1 month, second Thursday as usual. If you have any ideas for the agenda, put it on there. I think in wrap up, we've got a work group working on the Poplar idea. We're gonna move forward on the youth team member project. Somebody have a comment?
Well, like study groups.
I think that's just background noise.
Okay. Yeah, and a lot of discussion. Oh, the public works folks, we're gonna get together and talk with them about the Poplar Farm. We're also probably going to set up another tour of the wastewater treatment plant. So those are kind of the wrap ups, unless I'm missing something. Jeremy, do you have anything else I might have missed there?
Nope, I think this is good.
All right. Any last comments for the good of the order? Appreciate everyone attending today and look forward to chatting to you between now and the next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Chris. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice to meet you, Jonathan.
Nice to meet